So starting with basic drum loop, just a breakbeat. So just a breakbeat that I found on Splice or something. I quite like the first part, but not the second part of this loop. So I'm just going to make sure the first 2 bars are in time. And I've just put that warp marker in there, and I've also transposed it up 2 semitones. That warp marker is just going to drag the whole of the second bar that was not super tight and just made it a bit tighter, but I don't want to make the loop too tight, so I haven't done every single transient. So I'm just going to edit this. Then processing wise, get rid of the lows. You can hear the lows actually sound good, but I don't need them for this, as you'll see. And I'm just taking off 5 dB, gain reduction, fast attack, medium release. I'm just getting rid of those peaks really. I don't need them. I'm trying to balance out the overall dynamics of the loop, as there's going to be a lot going on. A bit of reverb as well. You see how the reverb pushes it back into the mix? That's the effect I'm trying to go for. Another nice loop here, but I don't need a lot of the character that's already in it. I just want part of it basically. So I've cut all the lows off, all the highs. I don't need them because the other loops will fill that space in. I just like this middle section of the frequency range basically, and then I'm going to smash it quite heavily with compression. And you can hear it's adding with that much compression, it's taking away the dynamics of the whole loop, but it's also adding a massive ring to the snare. I'm getting rid of the attack on the transients because again I don't really want them messing up and jumping out in the group of the drum breaks. Fast attack, 10 dB gain reduction, and this one more high end, nice high end loop. It's quite clean. Took all the lows off. I'm only really getting rid of what's not there. And I'm only taking out a little bit of the peaks, just the peaks of the snare you'll see there. And with a fast attack, again I don't need that transient. But I don't want to flatten it all together. You see it's clipping there also, and it's no longer clipping. See how at that point with that much gain reduction, it flattens it too much. I do want that dynamic of the rolls of the pattern. Yeah, I've not used that, so no reverb. And altogether, as soon as I take one out, you can hear the difference. It is creating quite a nice texture. At this point, I could just leave it. That'd be nice if I just left it there, but I do quite like this really messy loop, and I wanted to get this in there. So just doing the same. All the lows harshly cut off, the tops rolled off as well. Don't need any of the high end stuff. A bit of compression. Again, I see I'm just literally catching I was just catching the peaks on that one. This in itself is a nice loop, but there's too much variation going on. So that alone would not fit with the rest of the breaks. So I've chopped it up. And I've actually made it, I guess, a bit more boring, so I've made it more straight, but I need it to fit with the rest of the breaks. So now it's going to be in time. EQ wise, just taking the lows off again. Compression, fast attack again. And it's only taking the very top of that snare off what's bouncing out. I'm not even taking that much off it. I'm just trying to balance out the loop without flattening it. Balance out in terms of dynamic range, that is. And then, again, bit of reverb, because it's becoming a very washy loop sort of break, if you like. And all of this stuff is just more of a big fat textured loop. It's going to sit behind the main stuff. And then I'll bust them together. And you can hear there are the different parts add up to the final loop. And they're all playing their individual roles basically, in terms of frequency range. Quite big reverb on this one. Longer decay time than the other stuff. And you can just hear, the decay time on those first hits. So it is quite long. A bit of EQ. So what I've done on the EQ, I've got the lows rolled off and then mid-side EQ, which actually without, and then with the EQ, I'm just boosting the I'm boosting the highs of the side channels on this one, but I've just realised that actually don't think you can hear it because it seems like this stream is in mono, but I'll cover this bit later in another video maybe. Yes, you can't hear that on yours, but on my headphones that's really wide on those frequencies. And it's just adding a bit more separation. So yeah, then I've got a bit of compression here. So the compression, I've got triggered sidechain. This first compressor is going to my kick. So every time the kick comes in, it's going to duck. And this next one is on the snare, because you can hear there's a lot of snares going on here. I want my snare to cut through. You'll see later my snare is quite quite simple actually, because you've got a lot of decay from the loops, but I want the initial transient to kind of poke through the mix. At the minute there's nothing in there that's kind of poking through the mix. It's all a bit wishy-washy. So every time the snare comes in, it's triggering that compressor just to duck down, only a few dB, nothing massive. You can hear it soloed though. So yeah. Now you can hear this is the definition. This is the one that's bringing in more definition to the sort of breakbeat now. Not a lot going on here. So you can see the needle's not moving that much. It's not bouncing around that much on the compressor. And I'm letting a bit more through on the attack of it. So I'm trying to let those transients through. So you're getting that little bit more clarity, if you like, on the initial part of the hits. And I've got a longer release time on that one as well. This is just for the top end. So for this one, this particular loop, had must have been bounced down pan to the left. So if I have it in stereo, which again you can't hear this, but it's much louder on the left hand side. You can see the meters. Look, if I pick the right, it's quieter. If I pick the left, now it's just grabbing the left channel. So it's picking up a mono signal from the left of what I would say is a cleaner hit out of the choices we have. If I swap it around, obviously it just does right rather than left. Now what I could do is pan it, so that balances it back into the middle. You can see the meters balance, but it's still not. Now I'm losing level on it, so there's no point. I don't need to do that. I can just take the left channel, and then I can make it wider myself. And I've done that with the has effect, and you'll see here what I'm doing to create that. Now again, I'll have to cover this in another video. Now I realise it's in mono, but by putting both left and right straight down the middle, if you like, they are both down the middle, I'm delaying one by just a few milliseconds. Now you'll get to a point where the milliseconds, maybe 30 to 40, you start to hear two sounds, but the has effect is quite cool because anything below that range, your ears or your brain is picking it up as just one sound. And there's a little bit of phase there. I always make sure the wet and dry is completely wet for this to work. So yeah, there's a bit of phase going on there. I'm a bit too far. You see how it's delaying now? That's the has effect. And it's just making it a bit wider for the shaker. The main kick and snare. Just hang on. Put that in. We've got all the frequency range covered. Kick and snare. We've just got a really basic kick actually. It's out of the noise pack. And that's it. There's a little bit of click on the release. So I'm just going to tap that release up a little bit. Try and get rid of that click. Snare is basically claps for the high energy sort of sound, and snare is really, I've shortened the decay on this as I just want I just want it to poke. That's it. I don't need the ring, and this is where the layers and the right settings of the compression that's doing the side chaining, that's where those settings really coming and tweaking around with the snare hitting and also having that ring from the breaks. Now we've got the drums. So I don't know if you could hear the difference there when I was just taking out the sidechain with and without. Feel free to just rewind it and go back. And you can hear it, as subtle as it is. Yeah, just a crash. I've just thrown it into the reverb send. Yeah, that's just a crash from a house pack.